Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Brewer's Minute. So this week, we have a really different and unique kind of topic, and the title of this video is Honesty in Deck Building. And you're probably wondering, what does that even mean? Honesty in deck building, that's kind of a weird phrase, and basically what I'm talking about is learning to be honest with yourself about your decks and your deck building. And that's something that I still struggle with on occasion, even though I spend so much time building decks. So to kind of illuminate this point and explain what I mean, we're going to look at a failed budget Magic deck. This is a deck that I've been working on within the past couple weeks, thinking I could find a way to beat the big decks in Standard, and it's basically a mono-red Dynavolt Tower deck. The plan of the deck is to get a Dynavolt Tower out, use Cathartic Reunions and Tormenting Voice to pitch lands, get energy, and eventually we just kind of burn our opponent out with Dynavolt Tower, with random burn spells, Fiery Temper, stuff like that. So that was the idea of the deck, and I started out playing this deck. Very first match, ran into 4-color Copycat, and we beat it, and I was like, okay, sweet, this is working. We just beat one of the two big decks in Standard. This is exactly how we drew it up. Our shocks took care of Saheeli Rai. This is going to be awesome. And then I played more matches and I kept losing. And I kept losing and I kept losing. I don't even want to count, maybe like 7 matches in a row we lost. And as it's going on, I kept making excuses to myself. We're getting unlucky. That was a big one. I'm not drawing my towers. What are the odds that we just never draw a Dynavolt Tower? Where's our Dynavolt Towers? Oh, look, our opponent, they got Dynavolt Tower. Where's our Dynavolt Towers? Or, oh, we cast a Cathartic Reunion, digging for a land, and drew 3 non-lands, and we got mana screwed. We're cursed. We're very unlucky. Something's up with this. So, went through a bunch of games like that, couldn't win, feeling very unlucky, like the magic gods are frowning upon us. We're never going to win. It doesn't matter what we do. And then we started losing to Planeswalkers. And Planeswalkers, that's a real concern. So I said, well, maybe the problem is, apart from us being super unlucky, we need a better way to deal with Planeswalkers, so Splash Black in the deck. Ruinous Path, we also get Fatal Push, but this gives us a way to just kill a Planeswalker, so we're not going to die. We're mowing down our opponent's creatures, but they stick a Gideon or a Chandra, and we just can't get through it. So maybe this will be what we need. So added those cards, went back to playing more matches, and did a little bit better. We got a few more wins, but it still wasn't feeling very good, and even worse, we just kept running into super janky matchups. We're playing like blue-white control or Jund control. Just, these aren't the decks that really matter. So it felt like, oh, like even if we maybe do okay, like these matches don't matter anyway, and if we lose to blue-white control, that's not a matchup we really cared about, wasn't really important. So we're unlucky. We are running into matchups that really don't matter, and that's what I'm telling myself as we go through the whole thing. So play a bunch more matches. It's still not really working. We're losing. We're not having fun. So eventually, after playing a bunch of matches and changing the deck and feeling unlucky about not drawing towers and unlucky about not drawing lands or unlucky about running into bad matchups, eventually I stepped back and I said, wait a minute. We've lost, 12 matches in a row with various builds of this deck, playing against a whole bunch of different decks. Either I am just the unluckiest person in the world, or maybe this deck just isn't good. What about that? So it took me a long time, way longer than it should have, but eventually I was able to be honest with myself and say, all right, maybe this deck just isn't good right now. And it's hard sometimes to admit that to yourself, especially when part of your identity as a Magic player is built around being a brewer. Yeah, it's kind of whether you like it or not. If you're someone who considers yourself a brewer, part of your identity and your self-worth is psychologically tied to your decks. And you got to be able to divorce yourself from that at some point and realize that building a deck that doesn't work, building a bad deck that just can't win it all, that's horrible. Maybe it's a complete disaster, you overlook something, or it's not in the right place in the meta. That doesn't make you a bad deck builder, and it doesn't make you a bad Magic player, and it definitely doesn't make you a bad person. So the more you can be honest with yourself when it comes to this deck building process and move away from blaming outside forces. And of course, there are times when outside forces really are to blame. You could pick up, I don't know, Legacy Miracles, Modern Jund, Mardu Vehicles in Standard, one of the big best decks in the format, and you could go lose 10 games in a row, and that deck would still be awesome, and it could very well be variance. Mana Screw does happen, all that stuff does happen, but it's easy, as players of a game that has so much variance, to blame the variance, blame the matchups, blame our bad running, point our finger everywhere we can except at ourselves. And I'm almost embarrassed at how long it took me to get to the point where I was just like, man, this deck just isn't good. Instead of battling and smashing my head against the wall thinking, oh, if I add this card, or if we run into better matchups, or why is anyone playing blue-white control? Why no one plays blue-white control? This matchup doesn't mean anything. Or, oh, we just never draw our towers. It took me so long to get to the point where I was honest with myself and just said, okay, this deck isn't working. Time to move on to something else, and that's not a blow to me or a blow to me as a Magic player or deck builder or person or anything like that. So that, I think, is one of the challenges as someone who brews is, unlike someone maybe who just picks up the top deck in the format, it's easy to get your identity tied up with your brews, to have your pet cards, to have these ideas you really want to work, and when those ideas don't work, it's much easier to point the finger at other places instead of being honest with yourself and being like, well, maybe this deck just isn't good. And to really grow as a deck builder and a Magic player, that needs to be where your fingers go. You need to be able to point your fingers back at yourself and admit when things don't work. And the quicker and more efficient you are at being honest with yourself, realizing when an idea just isn't coming together, it's not the time or place for this idea, the quicker you can do that, the better your decks will be, because the quicker you can move on to another idea. So training yourself to be honest with yourself when it comes to your deck building and learning to divorce any individual deck that you build from your identity, from your feeling of worth as a brewer and as a Magic player, is really key to being a successful and great brewer and Magic player. Like, when it comes down to it, whether your deck works or not doesn't have any impact on who you are. It doesn't say anything about your skill. So to train yourself to, as quickly as possible, be able to be honest with yourself and to point your fingers back at yourself and say, okay, I messed this one up. This one's on me. The better off you'll be in the long run, and the more successful you'll be when it comes to not only building decks and playing Magic, but really, this one applies to life as well. It's easy to do this in the real world as well and point your fingers to everyone else. So the sooner you can be honest with yourself and accept responsibility, the more successful you'll be, not only in building decks and in playing Magic, but in life in general. So anyway, that's been our Brewers Minute for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.